Have you been showing up for her? The girl that's deep inside of you. Often I want to get this microphone right. A lot of us have not taken the time to show up for her. And the her I'm talking about is the younger you. My name is Diana Patton, and I am so excited to share with you that I've been spending a lot of time understanding corporate women. And what I'm realizing, and it's just not necessarily just for corporate women, but people who travel through life and get their degrees and they start to move into their corporate lives and they've been busy, studying their craft, really getting into, being the financial advisor or being the attorney or being the hedge fund leader or the CEO of a major organization, the tech leader. Every single person gets to a time in their life where they have to remember how they started, because there's certain things that might be getting in the way of them focusing on their humanity, their divinity. And as you know, I spend quite a bit of time talking about that. And what I've come to realize is, especially for corporate women who I spend my time helping, they aren't visiting that younger them. And so, my question that I want to ask you today and pose to you: are you ready to show up for her, the younger you who needed to hear this? So that is the question that I want to ask you. Are you ready to show up for her, the younger you that needed to hear this? Because every single time I get into my corporate sessions, everything comes back to your story. Everything comes back to who you are. I recently shared with a person that she was like, "Why do I even care about my childhood? Why does it even matter? Those things don't matter. That was in the past." Yes, those things were definitely in the past, but that is your seed, meaning that that's where you came from. And in the first 7 years of your life, from 0 to 7 years old, that was when your brain was being developed. That's when you started to see how you were to react in times of crises. See that you were loved if you were just loved, not because of what you did, but because of who you were. All of those things are in the background of your mind. It creates what's called your subconscious mind. And in it are either the lies or the truth that you keep telling yourself over and over and over about your current circumstances. And that's the reason why your past matters. I'm not saying that you need to spend a significant amount of time there. I'm saying that you need to visit the situation, because there are aspects of your current life, habits, people you attract, beliefs, fears, doubts, things that keep showing up over and over and over again. And you don't realize that you're repeating the same patterns because you haven't sat with her, you haven't talked to her, and you need to revisit her. And so I want to share that when we go into our sessions, often a lot of people are would question, oh, this is when I do my speaking engagements, or when I am with clients, I always ask this one question. What was one difficult, unique, or challenging aspect of your childhood, and how does that show up today? And this question actually comes from this book called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And Patrick Lencioni is a colleague of mine. He goes out and speaks and has done a significant amount of research on why there's so much dysfunction on teams in corporate America. And often it's because we don't know one another. And primarily, we don't know ourselves. We haven't shown up for ourselves. And so that is the question that I pose every single time. And some people, it just strikes them as interesting. Like I said, why would I care about this? And so what I thought I would do this morning is I would share with you what unique part of my childhood that really just got me to thinking. And there have been so many, but I have one very specific, unique aspect of my childhood when I was about, I would say, 11 years old. I was being bused to another part of the city that I grew up in because of what's called integrative busing. That just tells you how beautifully aged I am. And we were being bused to another part of the city to help with integration. And at this school, there were maybe, there were a lot of people, maybe three or four Black people that were actually in this school in my class. And and the school was predominantly white. And so the goal, of course, was to integrate the school. And I will never forget being asked by Kim and Monica. I know them. Their names stay in my mind forever. They came to me and asked me, "Who do you think you are? Like, who are you? What are you, Black or are you white?" And that was a very serious question. Behind those words were, "And if you choose the wrong answer, we're going to beat you up." And that's exactly what they said. You try to act like you're so much better than everyone, walking around here like you're white. And so, um, I that day was a day that stays in my mind for throughout history, right? I was being asked at a very young age to choose my identity. And it really upset me because, partly because I was upset that why would they even force me to decide? And then also it made me believe, like, why are you trying to force your opinion on me? I didn't have words like this now to be able to put to that time, but I knew at that point that that was a turning point in my history. And I went home and I thought about it, and it made me, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my sisters, I didn't tell my mom, I didn't tell anybody about it because I was scared, but it really stuck with me. And of course, in that moment, I told those girls, I said, I'm white, right? And these are two Black girls, Kim and Monica, who were forcing me to decide about my identity, about my race. And of course, I was a little spicy back then. And I said that, just threw it out there. And as I said, I went home and I thought about it and I thought, oh my gosh, these people are going to beat me up. They're going to, they're going to beat me up and they're going to like do something to me. And I got scared. And that was the first time I remember being scared of being who I was. I was fearful that if I chose and said, because I said I was white, that they were going to beat me up. But I also knew that I had on the Black side of my family that I had, people talking about me that way, and I just didn't know how to turn. But that little girl needed me to speak for her. And at that particular point, I remember on the last day of school, they said basically, I didn't tell you this part, but they said we'll let you know who you are on the last day of school. Like, okay. So, during, and it was the springtime, and I remember this because, it was just kind of like going as it is right now. It was kind of getting hot and cold, and I could tell the spring was coming in. And that was my indication that if I don't get it together on my last day of school, I'm gonna get beat up by Kim and Monica. And so the decision came, it was the last day of school, and my stomach is feeling, really kind of fearful. And I literally got to my locker, got my stuff, and you know how buses line up, at schools? I ran to the nearest bus, got into that bus and ducked down because I was fearful that they were going to beat me up. You know how much that stays with me? Kim and Monica asking me to choose my race, asking me to choose my identity. Little Diana needed me to speak for her. And I kept running from my identity. I never told anyone for years that I even had a white father because I was so ashamed of that. I was ashamed of it because, my white family did not show up for me, right? They disowned us. And even on the my mother's side of the family, it was like kind of like I always felt like they looked at us that we felt sorry for us. I never felt like anyone stood there for me, stood there for our family, stood there for who we were. And so that unique aspect of my childhood has stuck with me for the rest of my life. There are other incidences that relate to the incident that happened to me with Kim and Monica in fourth grade, but that is a very unique aspect of my childhood. And there's so many elements of it too. And, me speaking up and saying, well, I'm white. And that saying that, of course, made them upset. But I've come to realize that speaking up for her and letting her know that I see her is something that I know is my life's mission and my life's calling. Which, if you see my adult life, you see me mentoring for young women. You see me showing up for women, letting them know, I see you. You see me letting people know that they matter. It doesn't matter about your accolades. You see me bringing people into my community who you would never know because these people aren't always in the limelight. They aren't always seen. But then they start to see themselves and they start to speak to her, their younger selves, and then they begin to see themselves and guess what? They then bring other people along with them. And I want to pull out my weekly download. You all know that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we send out a message to our subscribers at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we dive into speaking to her. And this is something that I have been working with Yanaya, who is our writer. And we've been talking about how we need to spend more time speaking to her. So, what I want to do is, I actually want to read a little part of what we wrote in our weekly download. It just always makes sense to me to take time to actually read to you what we put into our download because it's just so good. So, I want you to think back. When was the first time you felt like you had to shrink and silence yourself or seek approval just to feel worthy? And so you heard me share that aspect of my childhood, right? Maybe it wasn't on the playground. What was it like for you? Right? Maybe it was at a dinner table, someone silenced you. Maybe it was in a classroom when you learned that being good meant making yourself small. You see, the little girl that's inside of you, she's still there. As much as some of us would like to dismiss that, she's still there. She deserves to know that her voice matters, that she matters, right? And that she doesn't have to earn love, right? She doesn't have to perform. She doesn't have to shrink down. She doesn't have to be less of herself. And she doesn't have to keep sacrificing herself, working, 2, 3 jobs, doing 3 or 4 different things, being on all these different boards just to feel worthy. This young girl needs to know that she's already enough. She needs to know that. But as long as you refuse to sit with her and recognize that within ourselves, she will always be waiting, just as hurt and alone as she was before, just in a grown up body. So that's the reason why it's time to heal. And so I have chosen to take a different path in the way in which I work with clients. I'm not a therapist, I'm an attorney, I am a counselor, I'm a counselor at law, but I've chosen to realize that the task and the work that we need to do is within ourselves. And the academy, the Rise Advocates Academy, is an 8-week course that we've developed to help us understand who she is, what she stood for, and how we can revive her so that she can have a life that's reflective of the assignment that she's been specifically given. There are definitely signposts along the way leading her back to her true authentic self, to her authentic intelligence. And the Rise Advocates Academy is an 8-week class that helps her discover this. And we take people on the path to power, purpose, and connection. That's what we're all about, right? Is we want you to understand your internal power, not the power you force other that is having them power over people. It's power over yourself, right? And when you're on the path to power, purpose, and connection, you have all three of those things. You understand your internal power, you stabilize your purpose, and you begin connecting and influencing your community. You influence the people around you. You're not forcing people to do anything. You're not living with fear. You are aware and you are practicing who you are meant to be, right? This takes time. This takes purpose. And so I want to ask you, are you ready to show up for her? The younger you who needed to hear this, right? Because you need to, when you hear this influence that you begin to have, it actually transcends time. And it's not something where you're sitting in a class and you're just all day like thinking about her, thinking about her. No, you're actually looking at the habits that you do today and the thought that you have today, and you will see a direct line to how she was when she was younger. Believe me, this has happened to so many people. And I just want to share this and then I'm going to close that when we journey through our path to power, purpose, connection with our Rise Advocates movement, what we've been seeing is that, the academy helps people gain a level of awareness, right? And then after the academy, what happens is that, oh my gosh, I need to really practice this and get good at it. So then we go into the Ignite program. When the Ignite program is a 6-month mastermind, we dive in. And then you become an ambassador. You start really understanding your power, right? And that's when the influence really kicks in. And I'm so happy to say that we have 4 Rise Advocates ambassadors. And if you've been following me on my LinkedIn, you've been following me on, well, primarily LinkedIn, which is where I share the most, you'll see I've been highlighting people like Ebony Carter, like Darlene Cox, Charlene Katzner, and um, Catherine Phillips. These are women who are out here making massive influence. Why? Because they've chosen to harness their power. They understand their purpose. Well, and their purpose is continuing to evolve, right? Because some of us are like, I believe this is it, right? But they're really, really working on this, and this is what I want you to have. And that's the reason why I want you to join our next Rise Advocates Academy. You see the link here. Just go to riseadvocates.com/register, right? Just riseadvocatesacademy.com, register, and you'll be able to get in and join in on this path to power, purpose, and connection. Does this make sense to you? So, my hope is that you will speak up for her. And she's waiting. She's waiting for you to speak up for her. Does this sound like something you'll do? Well, if you want to, if you say, I don't know if I can do that, but, or maybe you say, I'm ready, I'm ready. If you're ready, you know what? You can join us today. You can join today. This is March 28th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we have a webinar on how to break free from the need for external validation. So these are ways that we can stay connected. But of course, I would love for you to be a part of the academy. But the masterclass that we're doing today will give you like a little toe-in approach and be able to hear a little bit more of what we're doing. Does this sound good? All right. Well, we will see you on Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for our weekly lives. Would love to hear from you. Give us a comment. Share how these lives are doing for you. Bring your team in, right? And if you have a business resource group and you have a women's business resource group or any type of business resource group, bring them in, right? Let's have a conversation. Let's have a dialogue. All right. We'll see you next